This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome to the Lekker Rugby Pod. Harry is back from his travels. I don't know. I mean, he traveled 15,000 or something ridiculous in 4 days. Harry, welcome back. It's good to talk to you again, man.
How's it, Mvia? As you know, because we get to know each other really well in this world of podding, I really never oversleep. I'm not a big sleeper. I feel like I sleep really hard, get my 6-7 hours in, and I'm good to go. I think I just slept 12 hours. I just turned off the whole brain and blew by our appointed time. Sorry. But here I am about an hour late with some coffee in me, hopefully some reflection in me. And it's really good to catch up with you. And after my Gulliver travels of the Tasman Sea, and I've been around the world looking for a rugby match, and I found one. It wasn't really the one I wanted, but I'll never be, what is the word? I'll never not be grateful. I'm not sure that's really the most graceful way to say that, but I'll never not be grateful for NZRU, for the hospitality that they have. Meat pies, fresh out of the oven for the journos. I didn't know that those guys were doing that. That's why they're sitting there looking so Cheshire Cat behind the glass. That I could be right in the center. Only two guys got to have the open window to this. It was Jamie Wall and I. I had the prime spot, full access, wandering around, no minders, no handlers. So I was just walking into change rooms and talking to refs and having a nice chat with Matt Pierce and Tony Johnson. Unbelievable experience, almost as good as that day with the Stormers in the sense of seeing behind the curtain and what it takes to get the grass ready, the beer ready, the buses, absolutely interesting. And then obviously the gripping contest itself.
Okay, what's interesting for me is, like you just mentioned, you were now an accredited journalist. And it's actually, I think, the fourth game that you attended last year in Australia, you were with Brett there. And you attended 2 Springbok games in South Africa and then in New Zealand. What's it like being accredited journalist? All those R's difficult for my Afrikaans tongue. And what were the differences?
I like better being, in the normal seat. Admittedly, I always have good seats, so I'm not going to, humble brag here. But I like being screaming, shouting, losing my mind, full blown emotion, getting to know the people around you as if they are your best friend. 2 hours later, you are literally hugging them. And that whole experience. In a press box, there's it's quiet. So if, for example, when Grant Williams drops the ball, you want to punch the table as I did. And then you look around and it's weird because there's 18 Kiwi journalists just staring at me going, what are you doing, man? Or you're singing the anthem and crying at the top of your voice to that beautiful choir. And there's just 18 men around you, all men. They're interested in what you're doing and why you're singing and how you're singing, if you have a good voice or not, but they're not really with you. So that's an interesting concept. So I like what I did in several matches where I was accredited, where I went both. I had my ticket, full, paid for it, sat with the people or the people that I didn't know, and then go to the press box. So I get both experiences. Probably my favorite. In this case, I was at Marius Kutsia, got my ticket for Eden Park, and happy for him. Kutsa maybe. But the Kiwi press box is interesting because you can wander all you want. So I got the best of both worlds there because I would just wander out, walked all the way down and just got to see people, talk to them, relaxing, funny people coming up to me and having the most enjoyable conversations. But then if I needed to be at a table with a nice broad expanse where I could write and think and do, that was cool. And then there's the meat pies and the beer. And you're allowed to drink in Auckland as a press guy, but not in Cape Town. Not on camera. Mr. Jojo, you are on camera now. You must take your beer and put it away. in Auckland, hey, mate, you want a beer? So I was like, okay, let's do this. I guess everyone's different all the time. What else do I like about it? It was nice to get reflections. So I'm sort of Liam Napier, very good writer for New Zealand Herald, a grumpy puss, Gregor Paul, He's a Scottish man who's become Kiwi, and everyone hates that guy. He is the worst guy in the world as a journo. I'm telling you. I'm not
Can I just stop you there before you continue? Just clarify that grumpy thing, because it's we have many Afrikaans viewers.
I did it on purpose. It's a
I know you did.
double
I'm going to
entendre.
take all the flack here, man. Come on.
Okay, we'll go with a U. It's a U. It's a U and two S's. Okay, like a cat.
Yeah. It's a cat. Thank you, Harry.
He's a pussy. Then we have, and then Jamie Wall, who tries so hard to be beloved by South Africans, on my right, and sort of disregard the fact that that Gregor Paul is just really grumpy and horrible, and that Liam Napier is the nicest guy in the world, and Jamie Wall is like ingratiatingly into South Africans. Just the information was good. Like something happens, and then someone would tell you something, or Andre misses, nothing seems to happen in the press box, and I just say to Jamie Wall, first time he missed all year. He's like, really? And he checks it. He goes, wow. So that adds to his article that he's writing right there on his laptop. So there's that. Since I was right there open, people could just come right up to the glass and did. I had that film of those three guys. It was complete access. So I think maybe if you can get to the front row, elbow out all the other journalists, push Gregor Paul to the side, and like I did, and get in there, it's magic. But I wouldn't want to be behind plexiglass, and I wouldn't want to be not feel the wind and the air and the rain and the feeling. So I think that's what you miss. Being forensic. But what the cool thing is being with the players 1 minute post whistle, seeing the blood on Quintupaya and literally saying, mate, you need a stitch. Like really, I'm looking at his chin going, yo, you're going to have to get some stitches on that one, brother. Even just the people that are around, like coaches, like assistants, the relief on their faces, the honesty that they have when they're not on camera and they say, we got away with one there. We snuck that. Or then they're not going to say that on camera. They're going to say, we had that game, we were in control, and the South Africans were not very, like they would say that. But the Kiwi assistant coaches were absolutely dying. A guy like Finlay Christie, sort of the best. It was the best moment of his life. He came through. And so that's fun to see people right post-match when their blood and sweat and tears is really literally on them.
Yeah. Well, you and I tend to spend late nights, very, very late nights in South Africa, exchanging voice notes that I have to listen to, undercover, literally. And we reflect on whether what is going, and what we're doing right, and what we're doing wrong, and what we should be doing more of, and what we should be doing less of, and all those kinds of things. The later at night it gets, the more introspective you get, and the deeper you get. So you actually made a point of, making notes when people approach you. So talk to me about that. Number one, how many people approached you? Because that's quite an eye opener. And what they told you, what they would see more, and what we're going to be doing in future.
Yeah, it was fun to bump into so many people. There was two possibilities. One was being in Sydney on the way to Auckland was a huge contingent for 3 flights, and I was obviously doing one flight, but the 3 flights were stacked together in the Sydney airport. So as you're boarding and waiting for boarding, and Safas always come early to an airport. They don't want to miss it, and they always pack in. You can tell. You don't look at the Veldschooner. It's not just a Veldschooner. You can see that who's standing in the line 1 hour before they call. And so there was that, and then in Auckland, just Auckland City. So walking around doing stuff, and I like to walk around and get some air and go on a boat over to an island and do that stuff. So you're running into all these other guys. And then it wasn't just South Africans. It was Aussies and New Zealanders that were there for the match, and people from Japan and Argentina coming for the match, Irish guys coming for the match. And so that's when people were actually talking to me a lot, because we had more time. We're not waiting for an airport or airplane there. We were just having a lunch, and someone would come over, and, just this guy is so adorable almost. He sees me as I'm walking by. I'm having my lunch at Al Brown's Depot. Great place. Fish sliders, skirt steak, sugar pie, and unbelievable drinks. It's open air right by the sky thing, the tower thing that you fall down from on purpose. And so he kind of does a double take, and then he drags his wife and kids in, and he's like, Harry. And for every one person who does that, there's probably 10 that would stare take a picture of me doing something or and point or even just wave. But there was, I'm just talking about the 143 people. That was my tally by the end, like as a real stat of people who actually came over and engaged, talked, sat down with me, did take a selfie maybe or whatever, but actually chatted, like actually said, I want to talk to you about what you do. And so I decided, as that started on the plane, that I would keep a tally and I would sort of generally do what, pod marketing people would do. They would say, what were the general themes? What was the feedback? So this guy comes over and he's like, honey, look, it's Harry. I told you this is Harry. And she's like, oh, that's the guy that you always listen to at night in bed. To your point. I was like, hey. And on the airplane, as I was leaving, same thing happened. Big guy comes on and his wife is right in front of him and they're both giggling, looking at me. And he's like, there he is. And then she goes, yo, he listens to you all the time at night. I've told him to turn it off at some point, and I said, this is becoming a problem. I'm going to get a complex. I'm going to have to speak much more sexy. So to make up, make it good for you guys. But that guy came over in the having the fish sliders, and he comes over with his little boy. The boy's 10 years old, and he's playing schools rugby in Sydney area, South guy. And his son is full-blown Aussie accent. The dad got the Durban accent. And he's like, my son's a scrum off, tell him some stuff to do, that kind of thing. So I'm talking to the young man, couldn't be nicer. And we had a chat. But this 143 sample size was interesting because among that, there were people giving me specific things. You know how it is. Why don't you do this, this, and this? Or what you should do is that. You must do this. There's the advice, and that's cool. And then the other section is just the specific. My favorite time was when you did a poem about Frans Malherbe. Like that kind of thing. And that's cool. And then the other thing was they kept saying, which you'll like, is the chemistry. The sort of what do they call it? The bromance, the cop movie where you have Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. You have two guys that are different, but they like each other and they chat about rugby, and that's what they would. Almost everyone said, you can have the guests. We like the guests. It was super fun to have so and so Dabo or Accredited, but what we like the most is just you guys chatting. So that was affirming, I think. And quite fun. Although at some points when you want to go to the toilet, and someone's stopping you and they want to talk to you, you're like, man, I gotta go. let me go and I'll come right back. Okay.
Give me this one. All right. That's quite, I love hearing these kinds of stories. I've had the same experience, but not the same numbers at Loftus, for example, people coming up to me and it's a weird feeling. I had people coming up to me at a restaurant while we were having supper or something. Very strange. I don't know how you do it. I like.
Yeah, one guy said you got to take that hat off, man. I don't like the hat. So I took my hat off to show him because my head was cold, and he goes, "Yeah, put the hat back on."
I told you that right at the beginning. Remember?
I actually have a nice head, a shaped head. I walk around in Auckland with no hat. It's just that when I'm cold, like at the game, and B, when I'm on this, I don't like this feeling of the headphones on my scalp. So it's a protective device, guys. Cheers.
Right. Talking about protective devices, I think you needed the protective device at that game. Let's talk about that. Talk about the experience. If the game itself has been analyzed to death, and we'll talk about the team just now. But that experience, switching the lights off, the haka, the choir. I mean, what an experience! They sort of copied what happened last year in France, didn't they? And I mean, they succeeded. This was even as I speak about it now, I get goosebumps. What was it like being there?
I think the Kiwis are not naturally a theatrical people. The French are, so they kind of know more how to put that on. I think that experience in France really struck them, and they thought, well, why was that the best view of the haka ever? It was unbelievable how the French did that. The superior camera angles, the complete blackout of the stadium, the true spotlights, Broadway sort of, caliber spotlighting of a show. They made a show out of it. So the Kiwis tried to do that. It wasn't as good, I thought, but it was the best they had done so far. But they're just not a theatrical people. They're more of a all shucks, modest, humble, nothing here to see. And the guys are they're not really like into all that stuff, A lot of them are just, chewing tobacco. They're half drunk when they arrive at the game. They got their boots on, the jeans, and they're just there for the rugby, man. And they hate the DJ, they hate all the
They talk
fluff.
about Eden Park or Loftus.
So there's a lot of similarity, is one point, and it would be more in South Island, I believe, because the South Island's more like the north of South Africa. So, but I mean, it's just they're kind of nonplussed. But they were struck by it, and I think it's there to stay. I think they will up their production values of the haka, because when you're live, it's not nearly as exciting and as exhilarating as when you're watching on TV, right? Because the cameras have you right there. When you're watching it, it's just some guys standing over here and there's some guys standing over there and they're yelling. So it's not, the theater isn't there. You have to have the lights. You have to have the actual theatrical performance. What I did like about being there amongst all these Kiwis was that they were telling me things about the haka that I didn't know. There are specific words and phrases and brands and levels, and we got the high level, we got the big one, we got the one that they reserve for this type of match, which, let me just say, it was the closest thing you can get to a World Cup knockout match absent World Cup, and that's why it was so unbelievable. It was exhilarating, and why people were coming from Japan to watch it is because it was heavyweight fight, the title fight, the main card, and it gave people like Simon Parker or Sasha Feinberg, Zulu, a taste of what it would be like in Sydney in 2027 if they're so fortunate as to get there. So it's a really great proving ground for everyone. Forget the Rugby Championship. Just take that to the side. The streak, the history, the gap between New Zealand and South Africa, how the All Blacks do have a significant edge over the Springboks in the record. So if you're going to catch them, these are the kind of matches that are gravy. If you could just get one of these, and you go up sort of 8-4 for the decade, you start to have that the rivalry come back. It was the fact that the All Blacks had doubts that they had lost 4 in a row. This would have been a 5th in a row to the hated enemy, the old enemy. I just set up really, and also the size of the South African contingent. And so I was talking to Grumpy Gregor Paul about that, and he said that the significant amount of those people would have been living there in Albany, North Harbour, which is fair enough. I think over the bridge, it's sort of mini South Africa over there on the north side, I think. But my question to him was, well, why weren't they before in other games here? And he said, that's true. It's the South African Renaissance. It's the how good you guys are right now, is what he said. So I think you look at that and you see them. If you want to bash Rassie, and people can do that all the time and critique him, he alone, I know he had help, but almost he alone rescued the rivalry, brought South Africa back from the 0-57s, and brought them to this point where it's always just one score or the other. And we're ahead in the Rassie era over the All Blacks, and they fear us, and the rivalry is back. And the people of Albany or North Harbour got in their cars, drove all the way, got there, bought the ticket, and they're proud. So I don't know what the figures were, but it felt, because we came really early, just like at an airport gate. The South Africans were there. It opened up at 5. South Africans were there at 4:37, and the guy opened the gates early for them. I swear, I didn't make that up. He's surprised. He just said, "Okay, we're letting you guys in," because it was all green and gold. So they come in, and there's about 6,000 green and gold people in the stadium, and I'm thinking, "Ooh, this is going to be like a 50-50 game," And no, obviously, Kiwis are super late. They're coming in, they got their coffee laced. There's no checks at the gates. So everyone's got booze bottles in their pockets, and they rock in, and anthems are going. The haka's going, and they're still coming in full force. Like everything's packed going in, and they're watching the haka as they're walking down, drinking their beer. So then order was restored, and it looked like about 45,000 to 5,000.
Okay, now let's get down to the rugby. I mean, you've been active on Twitter since that match. You and I had a very brief conversation directly after the match, and nothing since. I mean, on camera, we've been talking nonstop on WhatsApp, even on the plane. I mean, I'm so taken aback with Wi-Fi on planes. I know I'm living in the 19th century or something, but that to me is still something amazing.
The pilot's talking to someone, hopefully, so surely if they can do it, we can do it.
Yeah, but I mean, I asked you, send me a picture where you are right now. You're right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I mean, really, I would have been praying all the way. But anyway, let's leave it there. Let's talk about the rugby. We saw Rassie post a picture of his heartbeat or something, how exactly, overworked and excited he became. And I maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but I haven't seen him that animated and a little bit upset, even if I can say that, in a while. Did you notice that as well?
This game would have made everything fine, right? Eden Park would have erased Ellis Park. Eden Park would have become the story of the year. Eden Park was everything. And both during and after, I had very good views of him. I was within an arm's length. He was far more gutted than at Ellis Park. Ellis Park, he was embarrassed. Eden Park, he was gutted. There was a bit of his gees that was engaged here, and it was ripped away from him because he knew full well as a player, as a fan, as a boy, as a man, how difficult it is to come and take away that mantle, to rip it off, and to say, this little patch of Eden Park, the Garden of Eden is ours tonight. We take it, and you can never take that away from us, that we took that, And it was that close, and you can say, nah, it wasn't. They were in the lead all the time. Sure. But, unreplicable try where Willie is nutmegging himself and playing Keystone Cops, Laurel and Hardy. Try to ever see that try again, or draw it up for me, All Blacks. Show me that you had that on the board, And so what we'll do is, and then you'll slide, you'll take out his legs, and then, Chesson will take a dummy because Will Jordan's steaming by, and then you'll score. Like, no. Okay, so don't talk to me about that. Not saying the try didn't happen, not saying it wasn't deserved. I'm saying that to Rassie's feeling of what could have been, what might have been, what should have been, is that's not one of those tries you draw up and say, and so we're going to avoid the soft try. Like, what? How would you avoid that? In what way? Yeah. There's only one way, which is either going to be a superior athlete, so then you pick Fassi or Willemse, or Willie, old man, does get there, and he just sits on him like a couch, takes the penalty. It's fine. Do it. And that's an instinct fighting an instinct. Second, when he tells the story backwards, Rassie, he will know that he did have a good speech at Oranges. That's where his heart rate on the thing you just pointed out went the highest, was exactly at 40, as exactly at halftime. So he rips in, you lied to me. You told me you would not slip and nutmeg yourself, Philly. And so then he goes through, and then we win 14-10. And we win 14-10 in a way that felt like 21-10 because, there were these moments where you're battering at the line. You get either held up in a ridiculous fashion where you literally give the ball to Rico Ioane, and a prop at that range has to do better, has to know to do better. And then the final one is they want the clock to end. They are praying the clock to end. They even get a steal, and it's still not over because Jan-Hendrik Wessels wrestles the ball back, and you go, there's space on the left. You just go wide, we score, okay? Then Flash has a typical kick. Okay, whatever. A draw is a win, and a draw is a loss for them. They would die if they drew that night. It was just the worst. They would go out into the night thinking, cursing, and being so cross. And so Rassie knew that he could have made that happen if he had just had a few things happen his way. And when I say few, I mean 2, 1. And a coach of Rassie's caliber, knowing the history and understanding it, that's why he'd have been so cross. Now, there are other ways to see the match, which you and I embrace. We don't ref bash. We don't look at what the other team did. We also look at what we did wrong. So there was so many moments that Rassie would have also rued and regretted and been so upset with, dropping balls just in plain daylight at 39 minutes. Grant Williams from a simple top throw, just a little, drop down. Nothing wrong with the drop down. It just drops it cold. When he was looking at the run before the ball, that's all. It's a schoolboy error, Make sure you got the ball, then do whatever you got to do because you're the quickest man on the field. It's fine, right? So his quick mind goes quicker than his quick body. So many line out missed, as Rassie pointed out. Well, I thought so did they. So maybe it was that kind of night, and it was the referee wasn't making a space for either team. So we were crowding as well, and we were coming across. They were coming across. So the lineouts were more like 1978, where 80% was about right. 70 to 80% was how lineouts used to be, guys. It was a lottery. Now, it has to be 95%. And then, so it was more the counter ruck. That was my question to Rossi. The press conference was the counter ruck, which to me was the man of the match. They just had perfect timing. When you go back and watch the match, there's so many times where 1, 2, 3, and then that 2 is when the ruck gets disturbed. Ball, maybe even the ball's in Williams' hands already, and he still gets rocked. And so that's a learning for him, right? You got to rip that ball. You got to be really, really strong-handed as a 9 in that kind of night. Finley Christie had beautiful jumping over routes to the ruck. I mean, I saw so many times where he skipped and galloped and got around. He didn't do any wave arms. He just got to it, and then he ripped it up, and he had good routes to the ruck. So that's what Williams is the quickest 9 in the world, but he's sometimes the slowest to the ruck if you see his actual chart on the map. Kubas was different. He bulldozed his way to the ruck. So, it was a night to fight. And the only way we were going to win that game was we had to fight more. And the 14-10 and the way we bashed them by the end, and they were holding on and hoping the whistle would go. Guys, Kiwis, you were hoping the missile would go. So stop talking nonsense about how it was easy, comfortable. It wasn't comfortable at all. Your nuts were up in your stomach. That was what we wanted. And how are you going to have Simon Parker yell and scream at us and jumping around and not having someone put a fist in his sternum and put him down and Bismarck him and then have someone pull you off? Let's have a fight, man. So that part didn't sit well with me. We're getting too nice. We're getting too accepting, we're talking nice about the rivalry. Be brutal, and then at the end of the match, talk nice about the rivalry. So I didn't like that. And I think that's part of his heartburn and his heart rate was if he was on the field and Simon Parker was running around, jumping and being ridiculous, I think there would have been serious handbags. I'm not talking about alligator Gucci handbags. I'm talking about, a rucksack full of mud in your face. So we needed more of that, and just bless his heart. Pieter-Steph du Toit being live. I saw how much he has to run in this system. He's got a hunting ground. The radius is like the whole field, and that's just terrible for a big 7. He's not able to destroy people with his tackles because he's always at arm's length running full speed. There's no kill zone. There's no, on the Flannery version of Ninaber, it's not being funneled in. So, I just think Rossi would have been looking at some of that stuff and being upset because right in front of him was the laboratory experiment of Brown, Flannery, and Rossi. Let's not keep Rossi was part of this. Felix, what they're trying to do with the 4-man pod and run and gun, threats all over the field, 15 threats. If everyone's a threat, then no one's a threat, maybe. There's just too much cleaning that has to be going on in different places, and it's just very difficult to have Thomas du Toit and Ruan Nortia, run 15 meters to clean here and clean there. And so, either we're really early in the process and we just need to be patient, and this thing's going to work because everyone has to have more roles. Everyone's going to do more. And just understand that whenever you change roles in life, you have to wait, or we have to be brutally honest with ourselves and say, we don't have the aptitude to play this way. This is not going to work. And so rather than keep digging a hole in the night when you're trying to get rid of a body and you just realize that you're the bottom of the hole and now you're going to get busted, you got to stop digging and do it a different way. It's rocks in the ocean. So I don't know if we can persist in this or not. I'm not smart enough to know that. And people like Jerry, Rossi, Felix, those guys have forgotten more about rugby than I've ever known. And also they're much closer to the people and they can know about themselves. And this is very brave at some point to say, yes, we can. And I can tell you that in 7 months, we will be there. And so we're going to persist and we're going to be resilient. And we're going to keep making all props have to be able to throw to their left, to their right, an 8-meter flat pass to a scrum off. If that's what we're going, that's what Tamaiti Williams can do. So maybe that's what someone like Wilco Low has to do. If that's what we're saying, then say that to everyone loud and clear and then persist. I'm good. And that's why I try to change my mind about this team we named is, let's fucking go. Let's go full, let's go peak Tony. Or you have to say to yourself quietly, guys, and don't use the word DNA. Like I'm talking about aptitude, guys. This is not really for us. And we're not going to be able to do it in time. Andre Pretorius and I've been chatting a lot over the weekend of like how much time would it take to do this thing they're trying to do. Everyone watch the Excellence show that you did with Andre about what is Tonyball. What really actually is it? People just saying Tonyball and they mean something that's not Tonyball. But the idea of everyone being a threat, all 15 men are on attack, not 6 guys over here and then these guys support. Everyone able to do everything. I watched Tony Brown before the match and he was doing his own warm-up and he was kicking the ball and hitting the poles with grubbers. Hitting the poles, hitting the pad on purpose. Matt Pierce told us he's a scratch golfer. So Tony may be one of these guys who thinks everyone can be that skillful. Let me tell you, Tony, no. I mean, there's some wonderful athletes out there playing rugby for you, and not all of them are going to be able to do that. So I hope that there's realism there. And I fancy that Rossi is a very realistic guy and that he'll come to Tony and say, Tony, I love your stuff, but can we dial it back a little bit on the 4-man pod, on second phase ball? Maybe we kick early there. Maybe we find that kick space instead of the 5th phase, because if before the Artie steal we had, kicked a kick pass to the side, who knows? And then we never even have the steal. There's never that big moment. This is our house. We go, this is our house. We just took your house for the night, the Airbnb, Eden Park. So I think there's time and there's, Tony's whole career has been about taking Davids and beating Goliaths. But what if we're Goliath? So what could Goliath have done to beat David? I wouldn't stand around waving my shield while a little pebble hits me in the scalp. The second we announced the thing, I'm just running forward and hugging you. It's like a fight I had one time when I was in high school, when a guy, the judo champion of the school, was wanting to fight me. I was like, we'll fight the tennis courts. No, I want to fight in my backyard. I was like, okay. We go there and he wants to do all these moves. I just go into full sumo hug, just charge him, grab him, and slam him against the wall of his house. His mom picking me off, trying to drag me off him by the end. I'm going to take your tactics away, right? So what was the final 10 minutes at Eden Park? Was it really Tonyball or was it Goliath ball? And I'm a little bit dubious. I'm skeptical, but I still believe, Tony. I think you can do this. And I understand the point of winning different ways, plan B, plan C. The most honest thing Rossi has said all year, MVA, it was this one thing he said, was post Ellis Park, and he was jabbing Joe Schmidt. And he said, we don't think 2027 World Cup's going to be won the way that it was in 2019 and before. We don't think it's going to be defend and then counterattack like the Wallabies did to win, like Argentina did to beat the Lions. We don't think that's going to actually work because of the way rugby's going, because of the way we think it's reffed. And Rossi knows these things behind the closed doors about how they're going to de-emphasize the scrum, perhaps, and how it's going to be more difficult to drive a maul. I mean, there's all these different reasons why he thinks you're going to have a more Tony-esque, just a more crazy attack. And so maybe that's what we're looking at. But your question, sorry, was the heart rate. I could see why all of those things were making Rossi really, really upset. To his credit, when I was talking to him at the press conference, he's taught himself something. He's been doing some Buddhism or something. He breathes, man. He comes in and goes, like the Sevens guys, they do a little breathe. He's not hot when he comes into the press conference. He's calm.
I had a very interesting conversation with CJ van der Linde last night for the Afrikaans podcast. And the very first thing he said to me was, one of the reasons we lost the game is not because the ref was crooked or biased or anything, because the ref didn't reward us for our style of play and we can't adapt. You just mentioned it. If you're in a hole, stop digging, do something else. We struggle with that adaptability. These are our strong points. It's not working for us on the night. This specific referee will not reward it. Let's change it. And we can't do that. Any truth to that? What do you think?
Well, funny thing about CJ is he's like one of a patron saint to my family. My son really, really, really liked CJ van der Linde. So now that he's part of our WhatsApp group and part of Megaphone, I reached out to CJ and I was like, Dude, you're like, when I say you're a legend, I'm not trying to be cringe. You're really a legend in my family. There's a jersey of you in my family and my son. And he thought it was really hilarious. He's like, no, I'm really not a legend, And he's like, I go, in my family, you are. CJ's right, adaptability, the corner of the realm. We have so many adaptive players, by the way. I actually liked watching Sasha come on and be that proverbial finisher, like they wanted Damian McKenzie to be, but he wasn't. Sasha was the best bench field general on the night. He came in and he felt the shape that the referee was rewarding and wanted and did it. So I thought that was very cool and smart of him and adaptive. So, I think so. The ref is the ref. If we're going to go down that road, which I will only if we don't bash, because there's no reason to do that in a game as complicated as ours. He was relatively routine about his rulings. The one area where I think it's fair game, well, there's two areas. One is the coaching of a team versus the pinging of a team. And I think, in retrospect, if I was sitting down with all the refs and I was having a symposium and there was no cameras, confidential, just refs and me, I would say, guys, I know what you're trying to do with the coaching part, but here's the problem if you're coaching on the rock and then at some point you stop coaching. What if in the 10, 15 minutes where you're trying to set a tone and do the coaching because you think that's smart, and it actually sounds smart to me. Like for the first 15 minutes of the game, I'm going to make sure they know where the lines are. And then I'm going to start pinging you. What if in the first 15 minutes, only one team is on attack? Hello, that's what happened. So now they got the benefit of the coaching. And then when we do our fight back, we don't. That's always going to look unfair. And your primary thing as a ref, guys, around this groom, this imaginary thing I'm doing is you've got to look and seem and smell and taste fair, okay? That's it. So whatever you're going to do, put it under the overarching rubric of fairness, and then you're going to be okay. So the problem with the coaching thing is you're picking and choosing what to coach. You're going to get yourself all tied up in knots. So just don't. Just don't coach at all. Ping or don't ping. That's it. I don't remember a day when there was that much coaching before. When I was playing, they didn't really do any of that. They didn't. They went straight to the whistle. They were quiet, and they marched you back 10 if you talked. So it was it was less yappy, and I think we should go back to that. So that's something I think the ref. I never use the names of the ref. That's one thing that the referee could have done better was either don't coach at all, or if you're gonna coach, then do the first 10 minutes of coaching for the All Blacks, and then apply intermittently some form of 10 minutes of coaching for the box. Okay, so that would be tough, but then do it, or say to yourself, okay, that sounds ridiculous, Harry. Then I won't do it at all. Thank you. Do that. Okay. The second part is the idea that scrum for scrum to get a penalty, how far you have to go now to get it. I mean, against the head, tight head, where you monster Tamati Williams' soul into his body and his scrotum becomes his brain. Is that what we have to do to get a scrum penalty? Finlay Christie on that feed was still sticking it under the flank, and it still got monstered. There is almost no scrum in the world besides the Boks who could do that to any team, let alone the All Blacks, which have a very good scrum. So you are literally saying, so don't get too excited about that scrum. That scrum is bad news. That incident told me how terrible it is now for scrums, if that's what gets you the penalty. I know there was another penalty, but there were so many scrums where we should have got a penalty early, like penalty immediately. So, that's, or if you say to me, scrum is just a way of restarting, you can lose a scrum and become folded without infringing. I say to that bullshit. Here's why. We have fewer and fewer and fewer scrums. So the reality is you have to evolve and adapt. And the 10 or 15 years where we had scrum penalties go up in percentage was good. It was a good adaptation because as scrums, then the denominator went down, then the numerator had to go up. Otherwise, scrum's not important. Just pick 3 hookers, 3 Julian Montoya's, 3 Malcolm Marx's, and there's no reason for technical scrummaging because you can survive being beaten by Wilco Low if you're not going to be pinged. It's just ball. They got ball. They were going to get ball anyway. But it's a really crumpled scrum. So what? You're still stuck in a scrum, whether it's crumpled or not. So the ball still won. I want penalties as a reward. I want penalties as a punishment for being a weaker scrum. Just weaker. Even if you don't infringe, but you get folded, ping, you have to. Otherwise, no reason to pick Wilco Low. Everyone looks same. just a bunch of flanks. So I don't like that idea. World Rugby has a definitional, artisanal, beautiful looking thing called a scrum that no other sport has even remotely like. It's the reason why we have the numbers on our back. It's the reason why even now when you run across a guy in Sydney or Auckland at an eatery and you say, what did you play? You can say, oh, you were 5. Oh, you were 6, because we can look at each other. What's the reason for that if you don't have a scrum? Or if a scrum's just a restart like league? Nothing. Just forwards, have an F on your back. And then everyone's looks the same, and you have maybe a tall F and a short F. So I think it's really important for us to howl in protest about that. We've got to be super vocal, really loud, kind of shitty actually, about the scrum hypocrisy that's going on. Good news, a Georgian's coming. The ref is Georgian, and Georgians, they scrum in the womb. That's actually how they get out. They get born. That's a scrum their way out. So I think, that's going to be immediate penalties from the first time that the All Blacks squeal, and it's going to be ping, ping, ping. You got to do that, and you got to card people for being weak. Well, Harry, that's not fair. What could he do? Be stronger. So there you go.
All right. Now, on that subject now, let's say, and CJ also said to me when he was still coaching in Japan, there was a directive from World Rugby that scrums have to be depowered. Whether
True.
that's the exact word that they used, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is that they're doing that now. Now, Russia announced team early this week, like we said, all caught out again. Unexpected announcement on Monday morning. But I wanted to know, is this now a turning point? If we're not going to get rewarded for our scrums and our lineouts, whatever, then we need to start adapting to that new reality. So move away from our own scrums and own, strong points. I'm not saying this new team that we have is that. But do you think there's a trend now that we're realizing, listen, it's no use persisting. Only an idiot thinks he'll achieve a different result if he does the same thing twice. And, it's going to be the same thing. So should we start changing our entire DNA? I used this term this week in one of the podcasts. We're neither fish nor fowl. We're sort of in between both of these worlds, old DNA, the new type of playing, the new World Rugby kind of expectations. Where are we going? Where are the Springboks now, and what's the plan?
No, that's the theme of the year. Like if we headlined the Springboks year so far this season, we would say the Boks in 2 minds. And then if we look across at all the teams where it's a really good year, Australia being first, second, and third on that, that they are the poster child. What you would say about the Wallabies right now is 1 mind. Joe has them in 1 mind. The first year he learned about them, they took heavy losses against Argentina, against us. They had a couple of big moments, but they lost badly to Scotland. Maybe he just spent that first year understanding who they were and what they could play. And, it took a lot of grief for Harry Wilson being captain because people in Australia really downgrade him, underrate him on his power. Not really using too much overseas players, which was also protested, including by me. I think they've got some wonderful players like Pete Samu that should be in the mix and so forth. But Joe got them, right or wrong, Joe got them into 1 mind. And at Ellis Park, and again, with that incredible win at Townsville, I think it's called, belief is showing, confidence. Whereas in our Bokland, we sense tentativeness, we sense hesitation. There's some people, vaunted, great people who are showing signs of nerves that we're not used to seeing that on them. Jesse Creel, still having a great year, but nervous. Maybe captaincy doesn't suit him. Sia Khaleesi always getting the biggest roar of applause at every ground, including bigger in Eden Park than Scott Barrett did. But not feeling like he has that fire to run through a wall. Maybe he's run through so many walls. He's got a palace now. It was someone else running through a wall for me. Even just things slipping and, just having that tentativeness. It speaks to this idea of what am I supposed to be doing? Did the playbook get so big? Was it 200 pages from what I heard before? Now it's like 300 pages with all these dog-eared tabs and, if this, then that. If I'm in the 3rd quadrant in a blue mode and I get the ball, then I need to find the inside shoulder, but not if the inside shoulder is west. Then I need to do this. I don't know. I don't know. It's not a knock on our players. I just think that when you have 2 minds, then you don't do the kick through that New Zealand did when Jesse was rocked in that first movement, and then they kicked through, and that's what really turned into the try, because we were hot on attack, but we were also hot on attack in an area that's very risky. It's right in the middle. And one thing you know in those situations is a kick through to coffin corner early in a slick night on a slick field. If you're just playing block ball, or I should just call it rugby, it's good. But if you're playing Highlander, Japan, Tony Brown never won a trophy ball, then maybe you try to do one more sweeping attack. Then they grab it, they kick it through. Cheslin Colby has to scramble, scuff it out of the 22. Then there's the line out that turns into the kick pass, that turns into Willie LaRue doing a nutmeg of himself, and they score. And you go, it's all about that part, but what about that kick through? What about that sweeping move with no sweeper behind it? What about the fact that we're launching attacks with no contingency, no supply chain, no one to clean anything, and no one to sweep across if a kick does go through? I just wonder if the attack system is ill-conceived in and of itself. And Andre and I are having a nice chat about that. And I'm open-minded. If someone can tell me what is the acceptable time frame in which we can improve, because we're not able to just drop tests. I don't think it's possible to be a Bok coach and be a Bok player and just give up 6 games on purpose in order to do something. I think you always have to, it's like doing construction on a highway. The traffic still has to flow, So everyone can do a project if you shut down the street for 10 weeks, but that's not a way to run a city. So I think we still have to win. That game was there for the winning. And I think that the All Blacks were switched on. They knew when to kick through. They kicked more than we did, 37 times. They were absolutely fine playing kickball. Nobody booed them. Finley Christie, put the B in box kicks. It was just box over and over and over. Nobody booed him like we would have Faf if he did it. It was a night not to launch ill-conceived raids that then get turned over and then you're under your sticks. So that's the part where I don't know. It's a big I don't know. I don't think that we are giving up and conceding the rugby championship, but we are also saying that it's not our first priority. We are saying that it's much more about getting Sasha time in the saddle, which I think is still a winner. But a midfield change, we would never change our midfield if this was a knockout, right? If we had to win this, then we'd have Damon de Allende, who played magnificently, one of the best players for both teams on the field. You'd have him with Jesse Krook because they know each other, like all the way back to 2015. You would definitely have Pollard in the team sheet at some point if it was a knockout come on, we know. So we know that there's some of that. But then also we have to pick and choose who we ride. And we go, hey, Peter Steph Toy, I know you ran a 10K, pell-mell, hair on fire, in a losing cause. Brother, go again. But that's going to be great. Give us another 80 in Wellington. So what if he goes down? He's one of your hardest to replace like for likes in the whole team. So I don't know what's going on there, but I do know we have to show up. We're not allowed to be embarrassed again. We cannot go back to the days of Alistair Coetzee and just have we're trying to play attacking rugby, but we're losing huge. That's not acceptable. And I don't think Rassi's doing that. On the other hand, it is interesting that we basically are saying that because of the bonus point system and because of what's happened already, and because of our terrible loss at Ellis Park and our tough loss at Eden Park, there's not really any way back. I mean, yes, we can towel up Argentina a couple times, and what if we can pull off a result here? I don't think the math still works for us. I mean, all that All Blacks have to do is sort of beat Australia, which they always do in New Zealand, and then don't get killed in Perth. So one of those teams will win. So, I wonder about the story. I think going into the season, it was different. I think it was announced and thought of as, let's win as many as possible. Let's stay number one. And also use the spine within which to introduce more Jan Hendrik Vessels, more Ruan Nortia run the line out more. But also see, does Lewitt still have it? Where is Sos? What do we think about Faf? Within the structure, there was enough winning and possibly even retaining the rugby championship and staying number one, within which to also have Ethan Hooker go out there and show us something. So now we're more, okay, let's just go. Let's just go into that. Let's do a lab, We're going to keep safe our Andre, Eben, Damien, Jesse, keep them safe. And then on the old guys that we're not sure about, let's just keep them in there and see. Let's just test it. Let's see what's going on there. And then on the bubble players where we're not, they're neither junior nor senior, then it's more about rotational. And some of that's already decided. I think, for example, some of the prop rotation and the idea of Jan-Hendrik Wessels playing both hooker and then also sometimes prop, I think that was preordained. And I think it suits him very well, New Zealand conditions, by the way. But I think some of the other ones, no, I don't believe for 1 second that we wouldn't have Eben, Andre, Damien, and Jesse out there if we thought that the rugby championship was on the line.
Yeah. Well, from what you've all said, there's one thing that stands out to me. And, when a double World Cup winning Springbok looks unsure and tentative, that to me goes down to the coaching. And I had a very interesting discussion with a well-known coach this morning. And he said to me, there's too many cooks in that kitchen. And, there's Felix Jones, who's now attack and defense and skills and lineouts, whatever you want to call it. There's obviously Dodie, there's Jerry, there's Dwayne in the lineouts, there's Dion in the lineouts. There's who do they listen to, man? I'm getting the idea. You mentioned Joe Schmidt, there's a single-mindedness and know where they're going. It's about the messaging. The messaging is messed up. Who do they listen to? Whose voice carries more weight? I think that's a big part of the problem the Springboks experience. That coaching team there's too many voices, and they might not always say the same thing. What do you think of that?
So were you talking to Franco Smith? Is that what it was? You can reveal. There are coaches who have one strong, clear voice. Rassi believes in a team of equals. Best enemies, best friends, really open debate. I'm not claiming that I know I'm, best friends with Rassi now, but I will say this. He's happy to get opinions from a guy like me. So he's not this, he's different. Joe Schmidt would never take an opinion from me, and he would immediately tell me that I'm stupid, in, passive aggressive Kiwi way. So Rassi's really open, man. He's like an open guy. He's a crazy learner. He would probably go watch a surfer somewhere in New Zealand, and the guy comes out of the sea would probably go, how do you wax that board exactly? Like he would want to know that stuff, So I think he knows when to stop that and become less open Rassi and become, I will drink your blood, Rassi. And he times that around the big tournaments. He doesn't rate the rugby championship. I mean, he likes to beat New Zealand. Okay. So he was really gutted that he lost to All Blacks. But I don't know, I get the feeling that he knows that in the consciousness and the books and the annals of life, that the rugby championship was a brief experiment that probably peters out at some point anyway. So it's more about the world, the big record, in the end, the back-to-back-to-back. That's how he'll be judged. The Lions series and the back-to-back-to-back. If he does back-to-back-to-back and he beat the Lions, doesn't matter how that happened, by the way. 1 point, Nick Berrygate, he won't care because he'll know that in the annals of history, he will be the greatest coach in the history of rugby. That's it. And it won't be a debate if he goes back-to-back-to-back, beats the Lions. So I trust Rassi that he knows how to manage his own emotions, and that he can hear this and that and this and that say this and that across the ways. He actually does listen and read it, apparently. That's what I've learned about him. But it just lets him feed. It feeds his desire as a little kid in dispatch from not the greatest family, not the wealthiest family, not with the perfect, stripes on the blazers, boy. It feeds his desire to let me show you guys. Let me show you how much I love my country. Let me show you that I love you even more than you hate me. Let me show you how much I can learn. He's got fire in him for days. I think he can shut Felix up if he needs to, but I think right now he wants Felix yapping, and Felix is fucking yapping. He's just all over the sidelines, touch lines, up and down. fucker must shut up sometimes. But I think Rassi's okay with it because Jerry's so quiet, Munsterman. 2 Munstermen in the bit. It's like too many Munstermen. I don't know about Tony. I don't know. I'll just say this. I like the ideas. I really understand them better now that Andre has portrayed them, and everyone must look at that and watch it. Like really watch that show that you did with Andre. It's 2 shows back. Everyone go find it and watch it.
I'll put it up,
like, and really watch it without like turn off your critique brain and just listen and watch it. Then I think it's nicer to watch the game and look for the toniness. But I'm wondering sometimes about coaches that can do things. I mean, players that become coaches and they could do amazing things about their ability to coach players who are more workers. And I feel like Rassi is such a great blend of a good player, one of the only really great, test level players who became a great coach. Most of them are not that way. Steve Hansen, serviceable at best. Joe Schmidt, not a great player. Warren Gatlin, just a medium hooker. So usually those guys are better coaches because they have more compassion for the yeoman hunter-gatherers in their team, not just the ones who can fly, like Achilles, like Troy. So I think that's hard. When you can do everything, like Tony can hit, the poles with grubbers over and over and over as a middle-aged man, he's probably thinking, Andre, Willie, why can't you do that? So I wonder about that. I think Rassi is a good blend of, as a player, he calls himself the skinny 8, who had medium skills, not as good as Monet Duplessis. I think he understands that if your leadership in your organization, whether it's a law firm, a hospital, or a rugby team, if your whole plan is designed around perfect men and all compassion and aptitude and hard work, but also, by the way, amazing skill set, what kind of leader are you? You're not a good CEO, I'll tell you right now, because your workforce of 10,000 people ain't going to be that. There's going to be 20% absolute nonsense, burglars and robbers stealing your time and doing nothing good at all. And you don't get to fire them either. You have to keep them. Otherwise, the lights won't work. And then you have, that broad middle who are just okay. And they're never going to be anything other than okay. And then you got your stars, and they got to be rewarded, but also not too vinchat. That's the rugby team. I think Rassi understands that. Does Tony? And maybe Rassi's not even saying that. Maybe Rassi's just saying this is an experiment year. This is a lab. It's the Rassi lab. And we're all just in it. We don't know it. We're rats running through the corridors and saying things, and secretly he's having a chuckle. Maybe this was all along what he thought would happen. But to your point, I'd love to know. I'd love to be on the inside. Let me try to work my way in.
Well, hey, you've done it before. Let's do it again. No, my point is now, it looks like there's not going to be a rugby championship next year. We're going to have that All Black tour year. It's sort of probably the swan song almost of this championship in its current format. It doesn't mean anything. So that's all I'm getting at. I think it's a laboratory. I know Russ is very upset. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more. Let's close this down now. Talk to us about our guest on Thursday. And we'll be talking about the Springboks and everything else. Tell us about that.
When future rugby archaeologists look back in time, sweeping with their little brushes to understand what a pod and a podcast was, what were the people of the 2020s talking about the POD? They will actually, one of the main formative influences, the pioneers, an avatar of it all, would be Tim Cocker of the Egg Chasers. Eierjachters. He's going to be the guy. Diamond's going to be on. He is an Englishman in love with South Africa. So we're going to try to find out why, what exactly makes him tick, why he has so much time for the people of South Africa. So I've watched him work now, and he'll spend hours after a match just microphone in hand talking to people, and he just lets them talk. Blah, 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 this and that, We all have an opinion. We have thousands. We have opinions, and we actually disagree with ourselves. So, Tim, it's going to be great to have him on and just listen to him, what he's learned, what places, what shapes, what sounds, what tastes he's really enjoyed. hopefully it's just a chat. I don't want to go with too much of an agenda. I don't know about you, but it's been great to get to know him a little bit, and he was happy to join us, and I just think it's part of a story where he became fascinated with the thing, and probably doesn't even know exactly why he's fascinated, but hopefully we can get some more out of him about that, the fascination part.
Yeah. An honorary South African, nothing a South African loves more somebody who, grew to love South Africa. We like that. It's like an Englishman speaking Afrikaans. We just love it. So, you know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks, Harry, man. This is an excellent one. I missed our talks, man. You flying up and down. We always have these little quick reactions and stuff. I missed like an in-depth discussion. It's time for one.
Yeah, and I can realize now, just looking back on this last hour, I was getting a little bit crazy. So, apologies, everyone. I think I had some emotions to get out.
No, I would never have, I couldn't tell.
That was part of the 143 feedback, though. They said, Harry, we like it when you get mad.
Yeah.
That's when you get more poetic.
Oh, by the way, one of the things people say, they love your intro. So you're going to have a special intro for Tim Cocker.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that one. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. All right, man. Thanks. I appreciate it. Awesome.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.